2 years ago, I thought that my life could not be better. I'm a neuroscientist, and in neuroscience, we try to explain everything with formulas and equations. So I know my talk is not scheduled for the science session, so I tried to take it a bit simple. Why was I having such a good time? Well, I just finished my PhD, I moved back to my hometown close to my family, and I found an amazing new job where I could bring my own ideas. After all this time in academia, suddenly a dream was coming true. A dream that was destroyed by 3 words. You have cancer. I actually thought a long time how I should explain to you how I felt, but I think words are not enough, so I will try to do this with a picture. It felt like hitting the wall, but so slowly that I already could see it coming. No, I could feel it coming. And in this picture I made some years ago, you only see vegetables and no blood. I already felt pain inside of my body, despite I still was sitting in the comfortable chair in front of my doctor. So, what do you do when you get a cancer diagnosis? You're going to be probably in a shock. And then you're probably going to cry a lot. At least this is what I did. But after that first wave is gone, what do you want to do? What would you do? Well, probably you would do what nearly every new patient does. You go to the internet. I mean, the internet is great, isn't it? It's great for science, for news, for communication, and for watching cat videos. It's also great if you want to find out something about your flu. But what about cancer? Well, it took me less than 5 minutes to realize that with a pancreatic cancer diagnosis, I have a mean life expectancy of 3 years. Whoa, great this internet, isn't it? I think cancer is not only one of the biggest medical challenges we face today as a society. I think it's also one of the biggest underestimated mental challenges. Why is that? It's not because we don't know, and it's not because we are ignorant. No, it's because we are blinded by the bald heads and the weak bodies, by the so visible part of this horrible disease. In neuroscience, we call this phenomenon inattentional blindness. And one of the best examples to explain this is an experiment by Daniel Simons, where people like you are instructed to watch a video like that of basketball players and counting the passes they do. In the middle of the video, suddenly there appears a gorilla, makes some funny movement and walks out of the scenery. 50% of people watching this video with this instruction will not see the gorilla. So in our case, the bald heads are the balls. And the gorilla? Well, the gorilla is your fear. You don't see it until you have it, but once you have it, you cannot miss it, because this gorilla starts sleeping next to you every night, snoring, waking you up. When my doctor had to give me my diagnosis, he told me a little story of a similar case. And he said, look, this guy today is still well up, skiing in the mountain. For him, it was a kind of a side comment. But for me, it became a headline. It became my mantra that kept me going through this time, this horrible time, that helped me to make my decision that I want to face my fate. Yes, I knew I could not turn back time. There are things we cannot change, but we always can change the way we look at things. I knew a long treatment in the hospital was in front of me. So I packed my stuff and informed my friends and family. And I told my godchild that I will miss her birthday because I have to go to the hospital. Curious as she is, she asked me, why do you have to go to the hospital? Well, not being able to tell her the truth, I was telling her that I have a bobo. So she asked back, and the doctor, can he not put a plaster on it? When you're in a chemo, you will realize very fast how your body changes. Actually, it feels like having a huge hangover, with the little difference that you not even have been drunk. And it doesn't go away with an aspirin. No, it lasts for months. You don't want to move, you cannot sleep, You don't want to eat. Actually, the only thing you want and you can do is lying in the bed and watching the ceiling. And I always thought that life outside academia is a bit more funny than that. Anyhow, once a week, I got my weekly infusion, which is a kind of a weird situation, because to do that, you share a room with other patients. And you don't know these people, but you know why they are here. Sometimes they're alone, and sometimes with relatives. Sometimes they talk, like once the guy in front of me, who suddenly asked me, "Do you know what's my deepest wish?" "No," I said. "How should I?" So he answered, "That I can die in peace." So here I was, 32 years old, literally chained by this infusion, in this chair, in this room, in this situation I never chose, but was chosen for me, thinking about what he just said, that I can die in peace. Well, isn't this a universal wish of all of us? That at the end of life, we can look back and say, yes, I was exactly living the life I wanted to live. I was choosing my time wisely. Well, being connected to my chemo, fighting for life, I don't know if I chose the most optimal moment to ask me such questions. But I did. And I said, yes, I think this guy is right with the wish, but wrong with the timing. So I picked up my phone and made one of the most important decisions of my life. I said, if I ever get alive out of here, I'm gonna finish a triathlon. And even before all the toxic liquid could enter my body, I got my confirmation email in my inbox. So the same evening, I called home. My parents, they wanted to know how I am. And I said, great, you know what? I'm gonna make a triathlon. I wondered what they were looking, but yes, it was kind of funny. I have to add a little detail. I never practiced seriously endurance sport before. Just a little detail. But this was not holding me back to start my training the very next day, which means walking up and down in the hospital alley for 5 minutes. I was so convinced that my plan is going to work out that I was already putting the running shoes on. I was not allowed to swim, so I went biking. Normally, people in the gym have 2 plugs connected to their body. Well, I had 3, and the guy running the physio room was quite surprised seeing me walking in with my biohazard bag. I mean, he was more used to broken legs and twisted knees. Anyhow, he let me do my business, and I was very happy. Of course, those activities had nothing in common with the real triathlon training. We're talking here about 1.5K swimming, 40K biking, and 10K running. But this was not important. What was important was that I believed in myself while all around me, all the circumstances were saying no. In my PhD, I studied emotions. I know that the mind influences the way we breathe, the way we behave, the way we are. It affects the regulation of hormones or immunological markers. I know that people can walk over fire without getting hurt, or become ill from baking powder hidden in anonymous letters. Yes, there is a very powerful connection between the mind and the body, a connection we do not fully understand, and maybe never will, until one day we experience it ourselves. I can tell you, the 5 years of theoretical research were not as insightful as the first 5 days after my decision. I felt changed. What happened? Well, I don't know. Can I explain to you with the formula, the equation, what was going on? No, I can't. And I believe nobody can, because I think this is the point where science stops and the mystery, the magic thing called life starts. Now I had a goal, an objective. So I stopped counting the weeks until my chemo ended. I started counting the weeks until my race began. And I remember very well reading these books of these triathlete pros telling me that I should start an easy training day with a 5K run to get into the mood. Well, I was doing my 5 meters walk to the toilet to get into the mood, realizing that my body was not able to finish the second part of the task was putting me even more into the mood. Yeah, it was kind of ironic. But I kept reading. And more important, I kept dreaming. When I left the hospital, my situation improved. So I went for a walk, then for a little run, 2Ks. Then all my joints were hurting because I had no muscles. So realizing how my body was coming back was one of the most intense experiences I ever had. And I'm not talking about triathlon, I'm talking about moving, sleeping, or digesting. It felt like getting reborn, but in full consciousness. So the time passed and I trained more, and closer came the race. 3 months after I left the hospital, the big day was here. And I was ready. At least I thought so. Everything went fine in the beginning, but then, in the bike track, my problem started. You know, these times when you're ambitious and you want to achieve something, and then you realize suddenly that maybe it was a bit too much. Well, this day was one of those sometimes. In the middle of the bike track, I realized that my legs really started to hurt very badly. And I knew when I finished this, I have to run another 10K. It felt like hitting the wall again, but in a way different. In this very moment, an ambulance appeared next to me, and I was like, whoa. I mean, yes, my legs are hurting, but we don't have to overreact, no, do we? And while we were driving in parallel, I actually could see on the side of the ambulance that it was coming from my hospital. In this very moment, I suddenly started to think about all the patients I saw. The guy who wanted to die in peace. The old couple who always came together. Or the young mother I only saw once. And I realized they have their story and I have mine. And mine is that I'm sitting now on this bike finishing this task. And in this very moment, my legs stopped hurting. And 1.5 hours later, I crossed the finish line of my first triathlon. Thank you. Some weeks after this race, I gave a talk in my hospital sharing my story, which was very beautiful on one side, but it also made me very sad on the other, because I realized that I am not alone with this fate. Unfortunately, we know today that 30% of all of us will get confronted once in their life with a diagnosis, which means we either need a lot more chairs in this room for the gorilla, the fear that comes along with it, or we find a method to keep them out. After the talk, a young man came to me and said, "Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. My mom just got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it was very beautiful to listen to it." His comment hit me like a stroke. When I was a patient, I was so eager to find stories, like the skiing patient, which was my mantra. And now, suddenly my story became a mantra for somebody else. A story that shows that sometimes statistics can be wrong. A story that shows that you are not a number, because your body is not a number. Your body is made out of millions of cells with incountable interactions no scientist ever can quantify. So your body is not in the internet, neither is your future. What is in the internet, unfortunately, is a lot of negative news. And I know how great it makes you feel to read those numbers. If you're lucky, maybe once you will find a nice story in the internet. Like the story of Harriet Thompson. Harriet finished this year the San Diego Marathon in 7 hours and 7 minutes. Well, it's not the best time, you could say, yes. But you have to know that Harriet had 7 weeks before this race a radiation treatment to treat her tumor on her leg. And that Harriet is 91 years old. The problem is not that we don't have any stories. The problem are that they are not visible. And this is where I see a call for action. I have a vision. My dream is to find more inspiring survival stories and document them with short videos on the internet. So we can make them available to those who need it most, patients in treatment. Why I'm not going to write about survival stories? Why I do want to make short videos? Well, that's very simple. Have you ever tried to watch The Godfather or read a book when you have a hangover? I mean, when you have a hangover, you watch cat videos. People who are in treatment, they don't have the attention span of a normal person. They are happy if they can decide what to eat for dinner. I believe that a patient from Bangladesh can inspire a millionaire in Hollywood. Wow, sounds very cheesy, doesn't it? Yes, I know. But you know what? When I got my diagnosis, I realized one thing very, very fast. You cannot buy everything with money. Yes, you can get a better treatment, fair enough. But what you do with your fear? Unfortunately, your gorilla will not accept your MasterCard. This you have to handle alone. But what if we can give you something, a story, something concrete that you can grab, like a stick, so you can keep your gorilla at distance, or maybe just a banana, so he has something to eat and calms down. Well, then we are already one step closer where we want to go. So, what's a good story? Do you have to run a marathon? Or do a triathlon? No. I mean, I think it's fun if you're able to move your body, but I don't believe that life is a race. So what is it then that makes a good story? Do you have to survive? Does it mean that when you die from cancer, that you're a weak person? No. I got my diagnosis 2 years ago, and according to numbers, I should be gone in 1. But this is not defining how I live my life. Today, standing here, I have no traces of any tumor inside of me. Does it mean that I am healed? Does it mean that I will survive? Well, of course I will survive. I will survive until I die. And in the meantime, I will choose very wisely how I spend my time. 2 years ago, I thought that my life could not be better. Today, standing here, I know that I was wrong. Because today, I live very consciously the life I want to live. What I've learned is that it's much more important how I live my life than how long I'm going to live. This is what I have learned from having cancer. Thank you.